Now we're going to enter the final hairpin. Try to brush the apex and enter and exit on the outside. And that was it. That was the most difficult part of the racetrack. Hello YouTube, this is Frank from Happy Coder. And today in this video, I would like to talk to you about this driving game that I've been working on called Corner Cutter. And mind you, this is my first time developing video games, and my trade is web development. So the tech stack that I picked for developing this game is a JS or TypeScript compliant game engine called PhaserJS, which is mainly being used for developing games for browser. And the motivation for developing this game came from my years of driving. And the insight I've had is when you take the mathematically optimal racing line when cornering, you can kind of imagine yourself, your vehicle, as this weighted object swinging through this corner while being tethered to an anchor. If you think of the tethered rope as how much grip you have on your tires, then the mathematically most optimal racing line is the one that has the largest radius through the corner. And the game comes down to managing the strength of your rope, or how much grip you have on your tires. Because if you don't corner at a high enough speed, it's like you're not fully utilizing how much strength you have in the rope. Whereas if you corner at too high of a speed, then you run the risk of snapping the rope and subsequently spinning out. So this is the diagram that I drew for this concept. And the core idea is just we're going to place anchor points at each corner, and every time you want to make a corner, you would have to adjust the length of your rope, and you grab onto the anchor, which is going to swing you through the corner. With that in mind, let me show you guys the first prototype that I built. So this is the prototype that I built. As you can see, it's very rudimentary. The racetrack is literally just rectangular boxes. So when we start a game, we go through the controller mapping interface. So this game, I've designed it to have controller as first-party control mechanism. And after that, we press start to start a game, and each time you go through a corner, as you can see, you press the X button to tether your rope to the pylon, and that is going to swing you through the corner. And the car is very maneuverable, or the grip is very slippery. So we press on the start button to start a game, and as you can see, each time when you approach a corner, you press the X button when you're within the range of the pylon to tether a rope onto the pylon, which is going to swing you through the corner. And that's essentially the core mechanism of the corner cutter game. And in the second iteration, I started thinking about how to give the player more control over the movement of the car, because when we're making corners, the arcs are not always perfect. Whenever we are using the steering wheel to make adjustments, if we take that away and make the assertion that every time we make a corner, it needs always to be a perfect arc, I don't think it will be very fun. So I developed this idea of micro steering when you're being tethered to a pylon and when you're mid-corner. So essentially what it does is it allows you to use the D-pad left and right button to make micro adjustments to your racing line. So as you can see, the yellow line indicates when you're using the D-pad button that corresponds to the inside of the corner. Imagine we have an ellipse tangent to the current position of your vehicle on this tethered arc. When you're pressing on the button that represents the inside of the corner, you're effectively compressing the ellipse to be more elongated and more squished. You're essentially squishing the ellipse. Whereas as you're pressing the button that corresponds to the outside of the corner, you're effectively flattening the ellipse, or in other words, you're trying to increase the radius of your current arc. And this gives you more control to your racing line. And it was also at this point that I decided that the game is going to reward you for pursuing classical racing line, which means each time when you're cornering, you should always try to make your corner entry on the outside and adjust your racing line so that you're brushing the apex, and always try to exit on the outside. The game is going to reward you for that. So with that in mind, let me show you guys the second iteration of my game. So this is the second iteration of the game. As you can see, I've used some vector design tool to chase a random Japanese Touge to use as my racetrack. Everything else is pretty much the same, but let me show you guys the micro steering. So as we're approaching the first corner, the first hairpin, we're going to tether onto the pylon, and right now we can press on the D-pad left and right button to adjust our racing line to try to aim for the apex. At this point, I've already missed the apex, which is okay. The current mechanism of the game is that when you're adjusting your racing line with this micro steering, we're going to pause the time for you so that you can make a more precise decision. But again, the whole point is that the game is going to try to reward you for going for the apex. And we're going to make the second corner. This time we're going to aim for the apex by using the micro steering and untether the rope and try to brush the outside of the second corner. And now we're going to enter the third and the last corner. And again, we're using the micro steering to aim for the apex and try to exit at the outside, on the outside. And that, I believe, was the last hairpin of the racetrack. And the last stretch of the track is just a straight and a little bend. So majority of the time that I spent on developing this game was used on figuring out the math, using trigonometry and basic calculus to figure out where the car is heading. But after a few iterations, I've condensed my whole driving mechanism for the corner cutter down to this diagram. So for each corner, for each hairpin corner, we're going to have a pylon around to be positioned around the center of the corner, and its default radius is going to be set to be brushing the outside of the racetrack, and the game is going to reward you for trying to enter the corner on the outside, but always utilize this tethering mechanism to try to make the corner. But you should always aim to use the micro steering mechanism to try to brush the apex of the corner and aim to exit the corner on the outside. And after I've locked in this philosophy and added some visual elements, let me show you guys what I have so far as the latest prototype version of the game. So this is the latest prototype version. As you can see, we still have the controller mapping interface as you start the game, and we're going to press start to start the game. And I've applied this Neon Vaporwave aesthetics to the game, and I've generated a custom SVG element to represent the car. So we're going to start the game, and I've got to say I really like how this car feels. I really like this driving mechanism. I know this looks like an F1 car, which is not meant to be very slidey, but still, this is highly addictive. So we're going to approach the first hairpin. We're going to adjust the rope length, and use the micro steering mechanism to always try to brush the apex of the corner and untether to enter on the outside, and do the same thing again to enter the second hairpin, and adjust the racing line to brush the apex and enter on the outside, brake a little bit. And now we're going to enter the final hairpin, try to brush the apex and enter and exit on the outside. And that was it. That was the most difficult part of the racetrack. And the last segment, like I said, there's a little bend, but we're already past the finishing line, so there's no need to station a pylon there. So that's the progress I've made so far. And if you found it to be interesting, please check out the demo. I've procured this domain cornercutter.com. That is corner-cutter.com, which I'll be placing in the description down below as well. So hopefully by the time this video is up, I will have the demo live on that domain, so you can check it out and also enter an email address to join the newsletter to follow the game development of this game. So thank you so much for watching this video, and please follow the development update of Corner Cutter. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Bye-bye.